Welcome to United in Recovery. My name is Brooke Hartman, and I am a child of God. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and my story has lots of stuff in it: alcoholism, codependency, workaholism, loss, breast cancer survivor. But I'm defined by who I am through Jesus Christ. Each and every one of us are. And so may you hear that truth tonight. We're glad you've joined us as we continue in our series about sanity through serenity, as we focus on the Serenity Prayer. We have looked at what serenity is, defined it, a peace that passes all understanding. It's not dependent on our circumstances. It's on something greater than that. We've talked about acceptance and courage and wisdom, and last week was one day at a time. Tonight, we look at trusting that you will make all things right. Next week, we'll talk about surrender, so that will be the next part, if I surrender to your will. But tonight is about trusting God. Just the word trust alone makes my heart sink a little bit. Because the truth is, for many of us, if not all of us, trust is an issue. We have been proven untrustworthy ourselves. We have lied, we have cheated, we have stolen, we've manipulated. And so we have not been trustworthy at times in our lives. Or we have been the ones on the receiving end of untrustworthy people. It's hard when we hear that part of serenity is going to come through trusting. It's important that we remember that who the trust we are giving to is God. But even that is a challenge, because for many of us, we think God's let us down. Why is our loved one not sober? Why'd my loved one die suddenly? Why did I get a diagnosis? Why can't I stop using? Why? All these questions that we wonder. And oftentimes it becomes a trust issue that we have with God. Trust is core to steps 1, 2, and 3. That's who we are trusting. We are trusting that we can't fix everything in our lives, that God is a God worthy of trusting, and that we're gonna trust him. Proverbs 3, 5 through 6 says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Listen to that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Reminds me of steps 1, 2, and 3 again, is that I'm not going to be the one I'm depending on. I'm going to depend on God. It doesn't mean it's all going to look the way I think or it's going to work out perfectly. It's that I'm trusting him, that God is going to be with us as we walk through every part of our lives. That's who we're dependent on, not on us. We know what depending on us to get us through stuff has gotten us. Oftentimes, we've come up short. But how do we trust God? Trevor Hudson has written a book called The Serenity Prayer. I highly recommend it. It's short, small. Sometimes that's a kind of book we can get into. But it is powerful, even though it is a brief book. And he describes this part of the prayer as placing ourselves on the path of trusting. It sure helps me to think about that it's not an event, that it's a process. And we've said that multiple times through this series, that trusting is not an event, it's a process. And as Trevor Hudson says, we are placing ourselves on the path of trusting. We are choosing to start going in that direction, to stop going the other direction of not trusting. Remembering that trusting is a process and that we're trusting God. We're trusting ourselves. And for many of us, learning to trust ourselves is hard because we know what we've done. We know what we've left undone. We know that about ourselves. And so this is part of that pathway to trusting. Trevor Hudson gives 3 pointers when he talks about moving on this pathway to trust. First, he said, get to know what God is really like. I think that's a struggle for us. We have these preconceived ideas about who God is. Some of those developed in our childhood, some of those because of what other people have told us. But knowing who God is helps us because that's who we are trusting. He recommends we spend time with other trusters. I love that word, trusters. I remember early in recovery that I was told that people were going to love me until I could love myself because I was incapable. I think of that with trust, that I'm not sure how to trust, so I'm going to see those people who do trust. I'm going to watch them, and I'm going to learn to trust through them. They are an example. They are modeling trusting God. It's a model. Remember that people are going to let us down. We let others down. So our trust isn't in others completely. Our complete trust, who we are trusting through the Serenity Prayer, is God. We learn that through others. And the third thing he says is put to work whatever faith we do. Don't wait to be all faithful before we start trusting. Just start where we are. Put one foot in front of the other, going down that path of trusting. He shares several examples of actions we can take. Talking to God daily and being honest. That's part of the trust. Can I be honest with God about what's going on, what I'm having trouble trusting about? Can I be honest about that? And that's part of the process. I learned that I can be honest with God. He can take it. He's big enough. He said, Trevor Hudson suggests meditating regularly on some of the ideas that Jesus gave us about God. Is instrumental in my development of who Jesus is, realizing that Jesus would have hung out with me. The religious experts were threatened by him, but he spent time like me, lost, coming up short, a sinner. That's who Jesus spent time with. And if Jesus did that, that's our God. God spends time with us. So finding those places that we know who Jesus is, which tells us who God is. He also suggests that we notice goodness in God. What do you enjoy doing? Can you see God in that? That reminds us if that's this God we are trusting. And he also says, intentionally work at our relationship with God. How are we daily working on our relationship with God? Because that is developing our trusting that he will make all things right, not all things just the way we want them, but he is worthy of our trust. He's very worthy of our trust. Lean not on our own understanding. We trust in the Lord with all our heart. On the path to trusting. As we go into open share groups, or as you talk with your accountability partner or trusted friend, consider these questions. How would I describe my present level of trust? There's no right or wrong, good or bad answer. We are where we are. And what action am I going to take to increase my level of trusting in God? How am I going to start down the pathway to trusting? That's how we move towards serenity. Thank you for being with us. Remember that you are loved by a mighty God. Let's close with a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.